A 13-year-old boy boards a plane bound for Colorado. It's a court-ordered Thanksgiving visit with his father. He doesn't want to go. He tells friends he's uneasy. He tells his mother he'd rather stay home. Dylan Redwine is never seen alive again. What followed was a disappearance that gripped the nation, a mother's desperate search for answers, and a father whose behavior on national television would raise chilling questions. This is the story of a boy who discovered a dark secret and paid for it with his life. On February 26, 2013, 3 months after Dylan vanished, Dr. Phil McGraw convened what would become one of the most uncomfortable interviews in television history. Dylan's parents, Elaine and Mark Redwine, sat face-to-face for the first time since their son disappeared. The show was billed as a desperate attempt to find a missing boy. What unfolded was something far darker. Dylan had arrived at his father's home in Vallecito, Colorado, on November 18, 2012. Security footage captured the pair at a Walmart and McDonald's. The interaction was cold. Distant. A boy who wanted to be anywhere else. That night, Dylan texted a friend. He promised to meet him at 6:30 the next morning. At 9:37 p.m., he sent one final message. Then silence. His father, Mark Redwine, claimed he left the house the next morning to run errands. When he returned around 11:30, Dylan was gone. But here's what didn't add up. So you get back at 11:30 and he's gone, Dr. Phil pressed. And so you just laid down to take a nap. Mark's explanation was flimsy at best. He claimed he wasn't worried because Dylan knew the area, the campground, the river, the rock wall behind the house. It didn't find it odd that he wasn't sitting there waiting for me, Mark said. Elaine's response was immediate. In November. Mid-November, she shot back, incredulous. And you sent him without a coat. Dr. Phil pressed harder. At 1:30 you wake up, he's still not there. Did something go off in your head then? Mark admitted he began calling, texting, trying to reach his son. But the damage was done. A father who wasn't alarmed when his 13-year-old son vanished in freezing temperatures. A father who didn't call police for hours. You're his father, Elaine screamed at Mark. How could you do this to him? Mark's response was defensive, deflecting. Elaine, I don't know where Dylan is. I haven't had anything to do with this. Elaine's pain erupted. I don't believe you. I know that's a lie. I know you had something to do with this. Did you take a polygraph in this matter? Dr. Phil asked. Did the police ask you to take a polygraph? Mark admitted he did. Then came the stuttering, the shifting explanation. They told me I failed it. Then they told me it was inconclusive. And there was some question about the person giving the polygraph as to whether or not they were capable of performing that polygraph test. Dr. Phil, a man who has sat across from countless liars, saw through it instantly. He offered Mark a chance to take a new polygraph, with the best operators in the world, off camera, protocols strictly followed. Will you take a polygraph? Dr. Phil demanded. What Mark did next spoke volumes. Mark deflected. He attacked Elaine. He insisted he was the victim of a biased investigation. He claimed he didn't trust the media, all while sitting on a nationally televised talk show. A man who claims he wants to find his son but refuses to do the one thing that might clear him. Dr. Phil delivered the knockout blow. Since you've been out here, you haven't said one word about finding your son. For months, search teams combed the rugged Colorado wilderness around Vallecito. Thousands of man-hours. Millions of dollars. And all along, Mark Redwine played the role of grieving father, handing out missing person flyers, making tearful pleas, describing his relationship with Dylan as inseparable. But the cracks were showing. Then came the discovery. In June 2013, hikers found Dylan's partial remains 8 miles from his father's home. But the skull was missing. That wouldn't be found until November 2015, a mile and a half away. Prosecutors would later reveal why Dylan's body was so carefully disposed of. The boy had discovered something he was never supposed to see. For years, Mark Redwine maintained his innocence. He went on Dr. Phil. He appeared on local news. He created a narrative of a father wrongfully accused. He even filed a counter-lawsuit against Elaine. But the evidence was damning. Investigators found Dylan's blood in Mark's living room, on a couch, on the floor beneath a rug, on a love seat. A cadaver dog detected human decomposition in the living room, in the washing machine, and on Mark's clothes. The same dog hid on the bed of Mark's pickup truck. And then came the motive. Dylan and his older brother Corey had discovered disturbing photographs on their father's laptop during a road trip. The images showed Mark Redwine wearing women's lingerie and eating feces from a diaper. The boys were repulsed. Dylan, in particular, was troubled by what he'd seen. He told family and friends he dreaded the court-ordered visit. He didn't want to be alone with his father. Corey told People magazine that he encouraged Dylan to confront their father, to speak his mind, to express his feelings. He was definitely going down there with a bigger voice than he had before, Corey said. Prosecutors believe that's exactly what happened. Dylan confronted his father about the photos. And Mark Redwine responded with violence that defies comprehension. The boy's skull showed injuries consistent with blunt force trauma, fractures above his left eye. 2 marks on the skull were caused by a knife or sharp tool at or near the time of death. Dylan was not just killed. He was beheaded. In July 2021, after a weeks-long trial, a jury took less than a day to convict Mark Redwine of second-degree murder and child abuse resulting in death. He was sentenced to 48 years in prison. Judge Jeffrey Wilson didn't mince words. "I have trouble remembering a convicted criminal defendant that has shown such an utter lack of remorse for his criminal behavior." Even at sentencing, Mark Redwine showed no remorse. Innocent of all charges. Miscarriage of justice. Fake conviction. Sham trial, he wrote. "I will fight for true justice, not for myself but for Dylan." District Attorney Christian Champagne told the court exactly what happened. "After the passion of whatever caused you to act the way you did subsided, you didn't think about Dylan. You thought about yourself. You sanitized the crime scene, you hid Dylan's body and you went so far as to remove his head from the rest of his body." Looking back at that Dr. Phil interview, everything makes sense. The evasiveness. The deflection. The refusal to take a polygraph. The bizarre claim that Dylan was killed by a bear or mountain lion. Dr. Phil saw through it. The public saw through it. But it took nearly a decade for justice to catch up. Dylan Redwine was a 13-year-old boy caught in the crossfire of a bitter divorce and a father's dark secrets. He was supposed to be safe in his father's home. Instead, he lost his life in the most horrific way imaginable. But his story doesn't end with his father's conviction. Dylan's voice is still heard through the people who loved him, his mother Elaine, who never stopped fighting, his brother Corey, who encouraged him to speak his truth, and the investigators who refused to let a missing child case become a cold case. Where were you November 18th? When he went missing? Where were you? Where have you been this whole time? Elaine demanded of Mark during the interview. We now know where Mark was. He was crafting a cover story. He was hiding evidence. He was pretending to be a grieving father while his son's body lay scattered on a mountainside. Dylan's brother Corey described the moment he and his mother heard the verdict. "I think he went up and recollected and tried to get rid of as much evidence as he could." They got justice. Not complete justice. Dylan can never come back. But at least the man who took his life is behind bars, where he belongs. That Dr. Phil episode became a turning point. It showed the world what Mark Redwine really was, a man consumed by anger and secrets, a father who killed his own son rather than face the truth. Dr. Phil screamed at Mark that day. Not because he was angry, but because he saw what everyone else was missing. A killer hiding in plain sight. "I've been doing this for 35 years, Dr. Phil told the Redwines. I am curious about your interest in fighting with her and blaming her, or finding your son. Mark Redwine never answered that question. But the evidence did. And in the end, the truth won't stay buried, just like Dylan Redwine's story won't be forgotten. This is what justice looks like. This is what happens when a mother refuses to stop fighting. This is what happens when a boy's voice, silenced too soon, finally gets heard. This is the disturbing case of Dylan Redwine. Dylan Redwine was 13 years old. He loved baseball and pizza. He was a son, a brother, a friend. And he deserved so much better than what his father gave him. Rest in peace, Dylan. You will not be forgotten.